Hey gang, I'm Joe Edelman and welcome to The Last Frame Live, the longest running weekly photography live stream on YouTube. If you're watching live, please leave me a note in the chat and let me know who you are and where you're watching from, especially if you've never been here before. And just in case you're watching the replay, no worries, you are an important part of this process. Please drop a comment below the video so that I know you were here already. We got a lot of people sneaking in here. We got Picture of Fix is here from Hamburg, Germany. Lynn is here from New York. I got Scott out in Arizona. Joe in Michigan. Cooley's here from, gosh, where's Cooley from? I forget. Cooley, sorry. Cooley, Calvin up in Maine. Who else did I see? Jay in Southern Colorado. Michael down in Texas. TC just snuck in here. Robert's here from the UK. Awesome. Thank you. It's great to have all of you here. I want to dive right in. We got a lot of stuff to cover tonight, but there will be time for questions. So come on, seriously. If you're here, I would hope that there's some things that you could do to improve your photography. Otherwise, why are you here? So let me know. Topics, questions, specifics, I'll get to them. But in the meantime, we've got some news this week. All right, so first up on the news, this is exciting for the film people. Kodak is cutting the price of the iconic Tri-X black and white film, actually by up to about 30%, which is pretty sweet. So a 36 exposure roll of Kodak Tri-X film is going to drop from around $10 to $7 in the US. So if you're a film shooter and doing things really old school, good for you. Prices are coming down. And honestly, you know, if you go back to what film cost back in the day and you factor in inflation, that 30% price drop is really kind of getting film a little bit more in line with where it used to be with inflation and all that. Not saying that I'm ready to go back and start shooting film because there's a lot of other expenses involved with film. But just saying, for you film folks, that's pretty cool. Again, I promised you that we wouldn't do a lot of gear talk. I would keep it to, you know, the important gear stuff that came up. So, you know, we'll hit the big announcements along the way. This week, actually, I believe yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, Olympus made the announcement of their new it's not Olympus. I just said that, didn't I? Not Olympus. OM System made the announcement of their new OM1 Mark II camera. So this is now the second camera release in their flagship line since becoming OM System and having left Olympus. You know, I will be really honest with you. I'm still a big fan of Olympus and their gear. This camera is just an incremental increase. But I want to talk about that concept in a moment, right? So we're going to come back to that phrase, incremental increase, all right? So some of the feature sets, it's priced at $23.99, very reasonable for what this camera does, what it has. Basically, you know, they've kind of beefed it up a little bit without making it bigger and heavier and all that kind of stuff, because I'm sure it's probably got a better processor, but 8.5 stops of image stabilization. It now has AI subject detection autofocus, which includes humans as well as birds, pets, cars, aircrafts, and trains. The live graduated neutral density filters, that's a really cool feature that I believe it was the EM1 Mark III, if I'm not mistaken, had that, which definitely a cool feature. And of course, it still has the live ND. Blackout free sequential shooting. When you're shooting at the higher frame rates, your viewfinder's not blacking out on you. 120 frames a second autofocus in RAW. Single autofocus, sorry. 50 frames a second for continuous autofocus in RAW. All that's really pretty amazing. At 120 frames a second, it's got a 213 frame buffer. High-res shot up to 80 megapixels. Some of the other stuff here I talked about. Actually, I think I got most of these. They've doubled the buffer size. That's another big one. So, you know, it is definitely a great camera that's been made a little bit better. And fairly, it's been made a little bit better in ways that you couldn't have made better just by putting firmware into the camera, right? It's been interesting. I've been kind of following along with, a lot of the blogs and the articles that are being written, and of course the social media posts that people are putting up. And look, I'm not doing this to defend Olympus. I'm doing it to defend camera manufacturers, because there's a certain reality that we all need to start to get our heads wrapped around. Okay. And that reality is that we are reaching a tipping point with all of these cameras. And that is simply that pretty much every camera in the market today has more features in it than its owners use. None of you sitting here are using every feature in your camera. You're just not. And that's because these cameras have an insane amount of features that handle so many different genres and styles of photography that the average person does not do all of those things, right? And that being said, the quality level of the camera, the image quality, all that kind of stuff, all these cameras, it's beyond what our eyes are able to even perceive. So we're hitting a tipping point where, cameras are getting bigger, more powerful, all that kind of stuff. For what, right? Now, the gearheads are going to be gearheads. They're going to go out and they're going to buy, and they're going to be ticked off because Olympus is still using the same sensor, or they'll be ticked off when Canon or Nikon or Sony don't make a big enough upgrade in theirs. That's going to happen, right? I think if we talk just about OM Systems, obviously the challenge they have is they're a new company. They're not Olympus anymore, right? So they need to, for a while, continue to establish a new legacy that is going to keep their customer base happy, keep their customer base confident, right? And I'm not sure that they took big leaps and bounds, with this camera. I have no doubt that this camera is going to be a top performing camera. Again, being familiar with the company and their gear and all that kind of stuff, it definitely looks like a sweet piece of kit at what is really a very reasonable price. But given how most of the industry seems to prefer full frame and, wants everything maxed out, not sure that they are, accomplishing that here. So we'll see. Hopefully this is going to turn out to be a good thing for them. And hopefully, because they do have a pretty substantial roadmap lined up, they're going to have some more good news for us this year, which I'm pretty sure they will. The year's early yet, right? And actually, last piece of news before I forget, for those of you that are software junkies and like to go for the big expensive stuff, Capture One announced another set of layoffs. This is their second set in recent history. Complete restructuring. I actually didn't even realize Capture One was sold back in 2019 to a private investment firm, right? So Capture One Phase One. So bottom line, they are not doing well financially. They are not well structured internally. In fact, for the longest time, they didn't even have a marketing presence here in the U.S. They had laid everybody off, and then they hired a new marketing presence at the end of the year, and then they fired all of them, laid them off now. So part of the challenge is, hey, Kirsten here is from Camera Shake. Kirsten's glad to see you, man. For those of you that are not familiar with Camera Shake, it's the Camera Shake podcast. And yes, it's another YouTube channel. Don't watch him on YouTube because, he's a better looking guy than me, but still, listen to the podcast. Great guy, does great interviews, because of course he interviewed me, but he also does interview a lot of great people and a lot of really interesting people. Kirsten's also a musician, and if you look at a lot of his interviews and the people that he's interviewed, he doesn't go straight down the middle with, let's get every hot it photographer. He really talks to a lot of creatives, and I like that about his podcast. So check him out. Camera Shake podcast. That's it. So anyway, here's the thing about Capture One, and I said this before, I get myself in a lot of trouble, but this is also why I got rid of sponsors, gang. Just like last week, I know I went off on ProPhoto. If you're watching my show, I'm just keeping it real, right? I'm not insulting any of you, but if you're watching my show, you don't need Capture One. Keyword in that sentence, you don't need it. So my honest advice is don't spend the money for it, right? Don't spend the money for it. Here's what I find with most amateur, advanced amateur, and shall we say beginner pro photographers that are using Capture One, they're wasting their money. And this isn't about the quality of the photography. So like I'm not dissing anybody. It's simply about the fact that they don't understand enough about the software to really get full value out of the software, period. That's the problem. So I do that. Why not use something that's both less expensive and easier to use, right? Just is. You all know, if you follow me for a long time, I did use Capture One. There was a time in my career where Capture One made a lot of sense for the work I was doing. When I switched to Olympus, Capture One was complete overkill because one of the side benefits of working with the smaller sensors, retouching was easier. It just was, because there wasn't as much detail in the file, right? So even though I've gone back to the full frame now, working with the Sony a7 IVs, which is what, 33, 38 megapixels? I don't know, one of those, right? But I just don't need Capture One. If you do good work with your lighting, if you do good work with your exposure settings, yeah, is Capture One great software? Oh, it is, absolutely. But is it going to improve your photography? Only if you are willing to put in the time and really learn how to use the software. That's the key. All right, moving on. Okay, for our photography quote this week, I am going to go north of the border to a Canadian. Well, Canadian born. He's actually an American photographer based in the US, but he's born in Canada, Christopher Anderson. The quote, let's go ahead and switch that over. The quote is, "Forget about the profession of being a photographer. First, be a photographer, and maybe the profession will come after." There's a really, really strong reason that this quote resonates with me, and I want to break it down for you just kind of as a reality check for some of you. But to give you a little bit of background, Christopher Anderson, born in 1970, so he's like a young dude. Born in Canada, he is an American documentary and portrait photographer. He has honestly made significant contributions to photojournalism through his work for magazines like National Geographic, Newsweek. Very evocative images, often, and I think most often, dealing with social and political subjects. He is a master at conveying essence of the scene, the moment, with depth and emotion in his imagery. So I have a link to his website in the description below the video. It will take you to a page that is on my website. From that page, in fact, here, I'll share the link now through the chat. So for those of you that are tired of looking at me, you can go ahead and you can check him out and just listen to me in the background. But once you get there, you'll find a bio. You can click to go to his website to see his images. Check out his Wikipedia page. Also, if you want, follow him on Instagram. If you're following along with these photo quotes that I do every day and these pages that I've created, if it is a current living photographer with a social media presence, I am including links to their socials so you can follow them, friend them, all that cool stuff. You'll also find videos with interviews from Christopher, some cool little tidbits of information about him, links to his books, and then a full biography. So seriously, I encourage you to check out his work. Incredible stuff. And in case you're not already following me on Facebook or Twitter or X or LinkedIn, and don't forget Threads and Blue Sky, every day, Monday through Friday, I post a quote from a well-known photographer along with a link that's going to allow you to learn more about that photographer as well as see some of the work. Also, I share these quotes with links in my Instagram story every day. And just a reminder, gang, all of you, you're part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch The Last Frame every week. It'd help a lot more people learn about The Last Frame if you could do me a solid, hit the thumbs up below the video. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube is going to recommend this show to other photographers. All right, moving right along. Time management. for all photographers, meaning this is not just a business thing, right? This is just, hey, if you're into photography and you're passionate about it. So one of our regular viewers, and Tommy, if you're here, please let me know you're here, because I originally said I was going to try and get to this last week, but we ran out of time. A gentleman by the name of Tommy Meehan, who apparently is from right down the road from me. He's in Souderton, Pennsylvania. He sent me a message about 2 weeks back and asked me, I'm hoping that you can share your daily schedule. Like, when do you sleep? He says, I struggle with time management when it comes to editing and creating with my photography, and I find myself losing track of time and always getting to bed very late or sometimes falling asleep at my computer. He goes on to say, I would appreciate hearing how you handle your busy schedule. Tommy, we would need about 8 hours, but let me give you the very condensed version. And first of all, let me start out by saying it has been very, very much an evolving process for me. I was one of those people who went through much of my life 3, 4, maybe 5 hours sleep a night, and I would brag the attitude that, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Because I had a lot of life I wanted to live and a lot of things I wanted to do, and I enjoy the work that I do, so I stayed very busy and just kept pushing. And then I turned 40, and by about the time I was 45, those late nights with not a lot of sleep started getting me to a point where I realized, like, I can't keep doing this, right? And now that I'm, north of 60, doing nights like that without a full night's sleep, I can't manage. So, flipping that story upside down, I am proud to say that for all the work I do, I average 7.5 hours sleep a night. That starts with literally making a commitment. A commitment that it is important, a commitment that no matter what, you are going to maintain that level of rest. And I will tell you, hindsight's always 20/20. What I've learned by getting that 7.5 hours sleep a night is that I am actually a ton more productive during the day. So all of that being said, when it comes to the topic of time management, amateur photographers especially, and I hate that word, amateur professional, but photographers that aren't trying to make a business out of what you're doing, right? This applies to you every bit as much as it does a professional. In terms of somebody that's trying to make money, certainly this could be the matter, the difference between success and complete and utter failure in your business. But it applies to anybody that's passionate about shooting and improving their photography. It's crucial, right? Because think about just the things that we do, right? We are frequently juggling multiple tasks. We're shooting, we're editing. If you're doing it professionally, you're communicating with clients, you're managing your business. So I thought what I would do first, let's kind of break this down into some standard time management practices. And don't worry, I'm not taking like the easy way out, because you can find articles that are going to list these same things all over the internet, but they work. Just saying. What I want to do is I want to try and tie each of these things to the way that I do it and give you some examples. And I think actually, thanks to Tommy, one of the things that I've put on my planning list for the next month is to build out a full program on time management for photographers, because the more that I started putting my notes together for this conversation and getting some ideas together, the more I realized, it's like, there's a lot that I take for granted that is stuff that I've kind of learned the hard way, learned by failing at things that could actually help a lot of people. So I'm going to turn it into a little bit of a program along the way, okay? So, first and foremost for me, if you're finding yourself frustrated by the lack of time and your inability to get things done, I think one of the first things that you have to do, and I talk about this a lot, some of you are going to roll your eyes as soon as I say it, but I cannot stress enough, this is crucial. And that is just have a little gut check conversation with yourself about your why. Why are you doing what you do? What is the motivating factor? If you're a creative person, if you're motivated, if you are passionate about photography, it is really, really easy to get sidetracked and to start going down rabbit holes that are actually taking you further and further and further from your why, because they're loading you up with work and there's things to learn and there's things to do. And it's not that you're not enjoying them, but they're actually not providing you the satisfaction that you ultimately want from the effort you're putting in. And they're not actually getting you any closer to your goal. So the first thing I encourage people to do, like when you're finding yourself feeling a little bit overwhelmed, take a breath, take a step back, and go back to the why. You know, why are you doing what you're doing, and what is it you really want to be doing, and where are you trying to get to? Because you will be surprised, especially in my experience, how often you realize, like, the things that are taking up most of your time are not actually moving you forward. With that reminder, first thing on the list for me is always, try to prioritize your tasks. And you do need to keep track of what work you have, what tasks you have. There are thousands of different ways to do that. But the worst way to do that is in your head, period. Right? So where all of this time management is going to lead to something you're going to hear over and over and over again is the idea of some discipline. The way you create good time management is to create a good workflow around your photography, around everything you do. In order to do that, that requires discipline, because that's what workflow is. It's a set of habits. It's a discipline, okay? But having a task list and then being able to prioritize the tasks. Obviously, you're going to start by identifying what are the most important tasks that I have to do. You can go online to Google and you can type into Google along the line, something along the lines of, how to prioritize tasks. You will find tons of software, and I'm going to actually show you how I do it as we get to the end of this list. But you'll find tons of software that's available. You'll find tons of systems, techniques. You'll read about things called the Eisenhower box that allow you to categorize tasks by like urgency and importance, all that kind of stuff. But you need to have a task list and to be able to check things off. Checking things off your task list is extremely empowering. It's motivating. Helps keep you focused, right? You want to be able to use your bandwidth on the important things, not the minutia. Task lists take extremely little time. Even if you have a very detailed task list, it takes extremely little time, right? But this is an ongoing document. This is a living, breathing document or tool that you're working with. There's even apps that you can get for your phone, for your computer. Don't become the person who gets up every day and writes a list of what they're going to do that day. You're going to be going down all kind of different rabbit holes, and whatever motivates you that day, forget it. No. This is an ongoing thing. New work comes in, new ideas, whatever, get added to the task list, and they get prioritized, and then they get checked off. Boom, 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 as you go. And you always need to make sure that you're starting with your highest priority work, dealing with that and working down the list. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself cherry picking things that seem like they'd be fun to do, and then realizing those big projects just got away from you. If you're trying to make money, that's going to hurt your business big time, right? Another thing that I am huge on is the concept of automation and batching. And I'm putting those two things together because they are kind of the same thing. The easy phrase is just to say automation. I'm a firm believer that anything that I'm going to have to do more than once, I want to find a way to automate it or streamline it so that it is not going to take me as much time, right? That's super important. Even like, for instance, with all of these pages that I'm building for the photographers, for the photo quotes, for my website, I have created a template. I've created a system for being able to build out those pages, and I'm building 6 to 7 of them each week, right? So that I'm always a little bit ahead of the quotes that are coming up. And over the course of the year, I'll get to the point that I'll have fewer and fewer to do once I've filled out, my whole spreadsheet. There's going to be about 170 of these pages that I ultimately have to build. So I built a system to do it. So I can build out 5 of these pages in about an hour and a half. And that's in that hour and a half, I'm doing all the research. I'm collecting all the images for the photographer's books, the videos, all that kind of stuff. I can get 5 of them done in about an hour and a half because I've built a system where I can replicate the pages, write the biography information that I have to write, all that kind of stuff. Because even though I'm using AI for a lot of the research, I'm still actually writing the pieces that go into the page. So there's a fair amount of work and effort that's got to be done on each page. With Photoshop and social media, I create automations and batch processing as much as possible. Simple things like, for instance, my Instagram posts. When you see me do an Instagram post, I have Photoshop templates set up that I am dropping the images into and dropping the lighting images into and that. So there's a couple benefits to that. Number one, it's very quick to put them together. I'm not starting from scratch every time. Number two, it creates brand consistency. When you see my stuff online, you recognize it right away because it always has the same format to it, right? The images are different, but the format's the same. Even the header files for my Facebook profiles, as an example. I have a set of Photoshop files. I just drop the image in, adjust the image so that it looks good wrapped around the logo, and boom, save it, upload it, done. Takes me literally about 30 seconds to create a new header file, which I only do like once a month, but still, it's about 30 seconds worth of work to do it. In my calendar, I have a little reminder every month, usually I think it's around like the 24th or 25th, that will pop up and say, update Facebook header. Boom, done. That's my trigger that day. That moves up to the top of my task list, and I'm going to take 30 seconds and update that header. Super, super simple, okay? But batch processing also includes things. So when I'm talking batch processing right now, I know a lot of you are thinking, okay, Photoshop, Lightroom. In fact, somebody was asking about that before we started. We'll get back to those questions. But I'm not actually speaking about processing right now. I'm talking about workload in general, right? Try to create in the course of your day blocks of time whenever possible that you can do specific tasks. So, you're going to give yourself an hour or two every day to do editing or processing, an hour to answer emails. For me, I do email twice a day. That's it, twice a day. And when I say I do email, that includes my social media messages. Throughout the day, if I see somebody like something or comment, if I can hit a quick thumbs up or a heart, I'll do that along the way as I have a moment. But when it comes to answering email messages and that type of thing, I do that first thing in the morning when I get into my office, and I'll usually do it somewhere around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because around 3:30, that's when I walk my dogs every afternoon. So I'll try to do that right before I will, go ahead and do my dog walk for the day. Beyond that, I am not looking at email nonstop all day long. It's minimized on my computer, and I don't pay attention to my phone when I'm in my office unless the phone rings, right? So that kind of stuff is important. But, doing batch processing and prioritizing tasks and all that, it also means, for instance, I have times of the year, which you've heard me talk about recently, where I will review my website, update my website, that kind of stuff. Usually the month of December is when that happens. This year it's a little bit extended because I'm doing a lot of content updates on the website right now, which if you haven't been seeing those, you're really missing out. In fact, here, since I just mentioned that, let me show you something that I have been working on. So
Yep.
this one just went up
For the
today. This is
Rams.
going to be the shoot breakdown that we're going to talk about, but since I'm discussing it now.
Jersey Knight,
So
moving around Danica.
this image was just posted on
Danica's
Instagram
all
today. If
over
you don't
her.
follow me
She
on
loses-
Instagram,
she loses
come
this. They
on, please. Please.
Over to Myers for
Because
three.
Instagram's mad at me, so I'm trying to dig myself out, you know, and
Yeah.
get my
Not-
numbers back
Jersey
up.
Knight
I'm not
trying to
gonna lie,
save
but
Kohler, boxing it
you're gonna get a
out.
lot more
Not
information
letting her have a
on this
chance.
article than you
Oh.
will on the Instagram
I
post.
see they were trying to was it
And there's
down
always
there,
little
but
bits of
little
trivia,
too
little
hard of a
tips,
throw.
behind the
Jersey Knight
scenes
has to
images,
hear
breakdowns,
the ref.
Yeah,
all the
refs
detail
giving her
of how
a
these
little bit
shots
of
were done.
tip on
And there's a whole
tossing.
category that I'm building out on the website. Like all of these images,
Now
there's
back to
full
Kohler to
breakdowns
Danica, over to
behind
Phillips.
them and how they were
Over to
done. And
Maggie
there's actually
McBuckets,
about
and she's
50
gonna
more on the
drive the lane.
website that I'm working on
Can't get the
reformatting so that they
bounce in.
fit into this
And-
format.
Oh,
So
Kohler with the steal.
this year, my website, you know, updates and that it's being extended a little bit more. It's probably going to take me through February to finish the work that I want to do. And I'm only giving it about an hour and a half a day to work on that stuff, right? But it's kind of prioritized right now in terms of me wanting to get it done. The benefit to kind of creating these blocks of time that you're doing, it saves you a lot of mental stress. When you're working very random, it's like, well, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. Well, let's see, yeah, I'll do this, whatever. It's the switching gear part. Switching gears is devastating to your brain, period. And especially if one of these tasks or both of these tasks that you're switching between are creative tasks, right? You need to be able to give yourself the right mindset and the right space to be able to work on things like that. If you have an image that you're going to do a lot of retouching on, I have some images that, you know, the retouching and the compositing and everything took me an hour and a half to 2 hours. Well, to do that in 15-minute chunks, and believe me, I've made that mistake, that image comes out looking like crap. Because out of that 15-minute chunk, I'm really only getting about 8 minutes in, because 7 of it is I'm kind of getting my head back into it. And the problem is each time you come back to it, you see it a little bit different, and then you veer off in another slight direction. And it's like, man, okay? So if I've got an image that is going to require that much work and it's going to be that detailed, I won't do it unless I've got a full chunk that I can work on it start to finish all the way through. Yes, when I get to the end, I'm going to kind of put that image to bed and come back and look at it the next day to make sure I still like it. But I don't want to be breaking up the workload into chunks, right? So it's that switching gears just eats up a lot of your mental bandwidth. For me, I find it causing me a lot of stress, period. I have no problem doing 10 different things throughout the course of the day, but I've got to set aside an appropriate amount of time for all 10 of them in order to be able to do those. Another one is, this has been one of my big challenges over the years, set realistic deadlines. When I left the newspaper business and started my own wedding and portrait business, and then when I started doing, you know, sports teams, and then I was doing commercial advertising, the worst habit I had was being a yes man. You know, it's like, any chance we get to tomorrow? Sure. And then I'm in a situation where my whole schedule just went to hell, and I am, you know, staying up ridiculously late and trying to get it done. And I realized part of it was being young and not being very smart about it. Part of it was wanting to please people, feeling that was going to be an important part of building the business. People always appreciate when you'll jump through hoops for them, your customers, absolutely. But they appreciate more getting great value for the money that they spent. And at the end of the day, that's what they're going to remember you for. If you can get it done a little bit quicker, yes, they'll feel that you treated them well, and that's going to be appreciated. But, you know, when you're working with people on setting deadlines, set realistic deadlines. And this is not just about your clients. I know I've just talked about the client side of that. This is also realistic deadlines for you, for your expectations of the work that you want to do and need to get done, okay? So one of the things, obviously, that helps tremendously with all of that stuff, calendars, to-do lists. To-do lists and task lists kind of go hand in hand, right? But digital tools. I mean, my wife, I love her dearly, but she's still one of those people, like, she's got notepads, like, you know, stacked up on her desk and notes. And crazy enough, she can tell you which notepad's got the note that she needs. That's not me. For me, it's got to be digital. I gave up using paper a long time ago. I saw Cooley had a question. Do I set up Google Calendar to set the to-do list? I'll show you how I do my to-do list. Google Calendar is tied into it, yes. So I get reminders, I get daily emails, I get text messages from Google Calendar letting me know, like, hey, something's coming up, or you have a meeting coming up in 15 minutes, all that kind of stuff. There are thousands and thousands of digital tools and apps that you can use to schedule tasks, appointments, to see a visual overview of the deadlines and all the commitments that you have. They're going to help you plan your day out more effectively, right? So again, I'm going to share with you what I use. Just because I use it doesn't mean it's the best for you. You do have to put a little effort into researching the options. But yes, you need a calendar. You need a task list or a to-do list that is going to keep you tracked. I mean, heck, if you're an Apple user, you know, even the Notes apps, the Reminder app now in Apple is awesome for stuff like that. The biggest challenge with all of this, it goes back to what I said in the beginning, a habit, a workflow, right? Don't go out and set up all these tools, and don't go out and like buy any of this software unless you're actually going to use it, because it doesn't work for you if you don't actually use it. You have to give it the input, right? Just super important, okay? I talked about time blocking. One of the big benefits of that, and this is why I like to highlight this separately, limit your distractions, meaning in addition to time blocking so that you're focused on one thing, be honest with yourself about what are the things in your workspace that commonly distract you. Checking social media, getting too many phone calls or text messages. You need to limit the distractions. You know, if you're an Apple user, you can set focus modes on your phone, which I actually use so that I can't be bothered during, you know, specific times, like now, right? All that kind of stuff. Go ahead and even in your calendar, set specific times for checking your email or social media. Just don't keep doing things through the day. But the distraction thing is huge, right? At any given time on my computer, I could have 15 or 20 tabs open from various things that I've been doing. And one of my bad habits for the longest while is I would see something that would be interesting and trying to be good and stay disciplined, be like, but I shouldn't be dealing with that now. So I'll just open it up in another tab and I'll check it later. And then one of two things would happen. I would either just completely lose it because I'd wind up closing out the browser, or I'd wind up finally getting distracted enough that I'd go and I'd read through it, and then I'd get lost down a rabbit hole, right? So I have a list in my note-keeping system, which I'm going to show you, where, you know, any links like that, I'll save those links. And then once a week, I set aside an hour just to go back through links that, you know, I found that I'm interested in. And the benefit that I found, the side benefit by doing that, is frequently when I'm going back through these links and looking at stuff, it actually sparks ideas for articles, for shoots, for bigger projects. So I find it actually to be a very creative piece of time going back through these different things that kind of caught my attention during the week. Another one that's a big one and often kind of controversial in the photography world, because it's not talked about a lot. And of course, you know, there are bullies and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, even for us photographers, right? If you don't have to do it yourself, don't do it yourself. Outsource it, right? I find so many photographers gripe and whine and complain. I just don't really like having to sit in front of Lightroom or Photoshop, and it takes so much time, and it's such a pain in the butt, and yet they do it all themselves. And to make it even worse, they're actually not that well trained and taught on using those pieces of software. So part of the problem is, yeah, they're doing it themselves, but they're also not doing it efficiently, and oftentimes not really that well in particular. In fact, somebody was asking me about doing a bunch of batch work today, like 1,300 files at a time, which I'm going to get to those questions, Mike, or Scott, excuse me. But, you know, that's the perfect example of, like, send that stuff out, okay? There are tons of companies now that can handle that stuff. And the thing that I always get back from photographers is like, well, but that's gonna cost me extra money. And in every single case, like Scott, who's got 2,600 frames that he's got to deal with after he shoots something, he's making money. So build that into the cost of doing business, because it's literally pennies per image to get it done, right? But the bottom line is, when it comes to the outsourcing concept, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, right? If it's extremely time consuming or it's not your expertise, things, so we talked about editing, but what about accounting, graphic design, doing logos, design work on your website, all that kind of stuff? None of those things are likely the reason that you became a photographer, whether it be an amateur photographer or a professional photographer. So feel free to outsource them. There's nothing wrong with that at all, okay? Another thing for time management, super important, not talked about enough, schedule downtime. Time off. And I don't mean like, vacations and all that kind of stuff. I mean daily. You have to have downtime. I have certain periods of time during the day, every day, that are my downtime. I do sit down and I have lunch every day. Normally by now, in the evening, now on show nights, it starts at 7, I will watch an hour or two of television with my wife. That's part of the time that we spend together every day. And I look forward to that, because that's also an escape for me. And for me, watching television or watching a movie, that's also creative inspiration time, because I'm one of those nerdy people that looks at the set design and looks at the color palettes in the movies and the shows and all that kind of stuff. But it is time to relax, where I'm not worried about my business or anything that's on my task or to-do list. Super, super important. My wife goes to bed very early in the evening. I'll usually put in an hour or an hour and a half worth of work before I go to sleep, but then I pack it in so I get my 7.5 hours religiously, okay? And I always make sure that if I'm going to do any work in the evening, like later in the evening, it's always light stuff. So that's usually the time periods that I have scheduled in to review links that I saved, maybe to do research on things that I'm considering doing, or anything like that. But nothing major and nothing that's output. I never, because I'm doing it in bed, which brings me to another point. But I won't do work that's going to be seen by the world when I'm just lounging around in bed. And something that I'm a firm believer in, have a place where you work. So I don't care if you live in a 1-room apartment, have a desk, work at that desk. Do your processing at that desk, do everything at that desk. You are not going to get consistently good results if one day you're processing your images at the kitchen table, the next day you're sitting in a lounge chair watching television, the next day you're sitting in bed. Your crap's going to be all over the place. And there's no way to even properly color calibrate your monitors if you are going to do that, because part of calibrating your monitors is factoring in the ambient light around your workspace. Have a consistent workspace. And that way, when you're at that spot, that's your workplace. You're in work mode, okay? It's tremendously helpful. And then two more things. Along with all of these things that I've talked about, use technology to your full advantage. Software, apps that are going to streamline tasks, tools for editing, tools for client management, which is called CRMs, online booking tools, calendar tools, all that kind of stuff can save you tremendous amounts of time. And then the last of the list, and then I do have one bonus tip. The last of the list is just continually keep learning. As you're scheduling these time blocks, as you are prioritizing things on your task list and to-do list, you have to include learning time. That's not going to be necessarily a daily thing, but you have to set aside time that you are going to give yourself the opportunity to learn, to stay updated on new technologies, new techniques, things that can help you make your workflows more efficient, right? The time that you invest in learning is going to help you save time in the long run. And so that brings me to the last kind of bonus tip, because it really goes along with this. Regularly reflect and adjust. This is not a do it once and you're good to go forever scenario. So you need to regularly review your time management strategies, see what's working and what isn't. Be prepared to adjust your methods as your business evolves, as your skill level evolves, as your personal life evolves, right? Because again, this is something that you have to implement these habits, strategies, right? It requires patience, it requires persistence. Um, Start with one or two things that you can lock in on and then add, right? The goal, create balance in your workflow. So the habits, but you need balance with life that's going to allow you to be productive, obviously without compromising your health, your sanity, all of those things. So a couple of things that I use really quick, and then we'll get a couple questions in here. This is good. We're actually going to have time. Cool. Let me just make a little change in my screen here, and I will share these things with you. So I kind of picked on my wife for her notepads, right? I'm not kidding. I don't use paper at all, but I use
three, and they hit
a
it.
digital
Cole.
notebook. In fact, I'm going
Deep three
to
for the Cardinals. 4:30
share a
to go
link
here.
with all of you. The link, actually, it's in the
Cardinals
description
not really
below the
putting on
video.
the full court
It's
press
already
now.
there,
They're kind of
okay?
dropping back into zone here.
I use a product called Notion.
They get it over to
Notion is, and I'll show you a
Mick
quick
Buckets.
view of mine. I can't take you
Over to
through everything
Foose.
because I have client information, and not that I'm worried about you getting my
Foose
clients,
to
but there's
Hughes.
personal information. I can't
Download to
just
Arnold.
paste up on YouTube,
Arnold
right?
can't get the
Don't make buckets.
So Notion,
jump ball. It's going to stick
basically
with
at
the
its
Rams,
most basic form, is a
And
digital.
Maggie Smith is going to come in for Nyla.
Eric says
Yeah,
we're
Maggie
getting some
with
other audio
2 fouls already
mixed.
this game, so
You
I mean,
are.
that's why they're kind of taking their time getting her back into the game.
Yeah, and I mean,
Let me just
we're
check
holding
here,
on to an
Eric.
8-point.
Hearing baseball. Somebody's hearing baseball. Okay, so I think where are you getting baseball from? Let me just double check here, guys. I have nothing running that's got baseball on it. Let me check all my tabs. Okay, now they're saying it's fixed. I haven't changed anything yet. Okay. Wow. Well, thank you for letting me know. I don't know where that came from or what it was coming from. I haven't changed anything. So, all right, let's get back at it. I'm sorry. But I'm glad it's fixed. If something comes back, please let me know, okay? Notion is basically a digital notebook at its most basic form, right? In fact, here, let me bring that back up so I can see that tab now. You can, track projects in it. You can build a calendar in it. You can tie that calendar to your Google Calendar. You can create wikis, create all kind of documents. It's literally like, in fact, a lot of people refer to Notion they refer to it as a second brain, right? That's what it is frequently referred to, okay? And I would agree, for me, it is. They've recently added some AI tools to it, which you see here. Here's a great part about Notion. You can start with it for free, okay? And then there is a paid version, which I use, which is only $8 per month. Super inexpensive, okay? In the $8 a month plan, you get history, which is nice. You get a lot more uploads that you can put into it. Just a lot more that you can do, but you don't have to actually. 99.9% of you in the photography world would have no use for the business plan, and you definitely don't need the enterprise plan. So for me, I use the plus plan. Super simple. It's amazing. Okay, so mine here. Let me switch this over, and I'm going to show you just really quick. You'll notice on the left-hand side, right? I basically have all of these tabs where there's I track my subscriptions. I have a quick notes section. Work that I'm doing on my books, content manager, which is where I do all my planning for the last frame, my videos, all that kind of stuff, information about my Tog Knowledge community, section where I keep track of all my presentations. In this section, I have all the marketing materials for every presentation that I do, the write-ups, the descriptions. I have a database in here of every camera club and organization in the United States, in Canada, and in Europe, and a couple other places in the world, right? So, and the list goes on and on and on. I have client information, I have personal household information, all kinds of stuff. What's also great is I can take any of these pages and I can actually share them online, right? So when I do a presentation, for instance, if there is a download that goes with it, I share the link. People come to this page and they can download a PDF of what's on this page, and this appears on the web for them, and I can turn it on and off at will. Basically, I run my entire life out of Notion, and then I use other tools to tie things together, to tie in Gmail, even like the photo quotes that you guys see every day. I don't create those images. Now, I didn't buy them either, but I don't create them. So what I mean by that, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show you that. I can't, unfortunately. Sorry, I don't have that part set up to be able to show you. But I use an online utility that makes the images from a spreadsheet. So every day it triggers, finds the date, finds the quote of the day, the attribute, whoever said that quote, pulls the background, pulls the color, puts it all together, and uploads it then to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all those. It's all completely automated. I don't touch it at all, right? So it took me about a day to set it all up. It took me a couple of weeks to put the whole spreadsheet together. I've got essentially like 2 years worth of quotes in the database. But now it just runs on its own, and I don't have to do anything with it, right? So when it comes again to automation, all that kind of stuff, super, super important, okay? So a couple of the questions that came along with this, I want to go back here and see what we had here. Where am I at? All right, so Scott had a question. He uses Lightroom to batch files. Is there a certain setting that should be used from the raw file to batch into Lightroom that could make post-processing faster? So I asked him for some more information. He is batching about 1,300 files at one time. So here's the challenge with that, guys, right? Or Scott, I'm sorry. That's just way too many, period. And he did explain what he's shooting. I don't remember. I think I missed some message as to what it is he's shooting. But let me see if I can find that. No, I missed that one. It kind of doesn't matter. But I mean, there's a couple things that I would question about your setup, Scott. So number one, to try and batch process that many files, no dice. I would honestly look at one of the services that are out there that will do bulk files like that, where you just upload them and then they're going to come back and they're done, right? And they basically build presets around your style, and you're going to do that for like a penny or two, a piece. But the thing that I would question, and I'm not trying to be a jerk by this, I'm just trying to keep it real from my own experience. Motorsports is what I say. Okay, so 2,600 files from a 3-day event. You have to question is, do you actually have 2,600 sellable images, right? One of the things that I would encourage you to do, if you've never done this, is go back through your last several events that you've done and look very closely at the idea of how many images, different images, not total sales, but how many different images are you making sales from at each of these events? Are you actually making sales from, the majority of these 1,300 files or 2,600 files or not, right? If you are, then okay, my point's moot. But I'm kind of inclined to think that you're probably not, which that says there's opportunity for you to take a better look at what tends to sell and, do a little bit more aggressive culling. You will find statistically, so this is a proven business fact, you will find statistically that if you can offer fewer choices, you'll actually make more sales, right? You tend to handicap people by giving them too many options to look at, right? So by going ahead and, uploading fewer images, you're going to be better off. But the problem is, from a purely technical standpoint, you can Google, how to optimize Lightroom. And it's going to depend, obviously, on how many gigs you have in your computer of RAM, how fast your processor is. If you're not running like an M2 or an M3 processor with about 32 gigs of RAM, it's going to be a slow processor, period. Right? It just is. So I think those are the kinds of things that you've got to realize, that you're asking your computer to do an insane amount of work there. If you want it to be fast, build a supercomputer. Like, literally, you need to max out a Mac or a PC, and go from there, and that will streamline it. But I'd honestly consider sending this stuff out. I really would. So. Cooley, do I set up emails to send to customers for special occasions? Yes, I set up all kinds of emails that are all automated. When people join my email news list, they get emails. When people sign up for presentations, they get automated emails. When people join my Tog Knowledge community, they get like a 5-day set of automated emails that introduce them to the community and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is automated, and it's using tools that will automatically put their name in it, all that kind of stuff. It takes a couple days to set all that stuff up, but that's the beauty of it. Once it's set up, it just does its thing, right? Period. And it runs. And then I get little reports that say, yeah, this ran and here's who it went to. So all I have to do is spend a few minutes each week, look at those reports and see what's happening, or it's going to say, hey, is there something I need to deal with, hands-on in that respect. But for my clients, yes, I have automated emails that go out to my clients on a regular basis, especially around birthdays and things like that, anniversaries, things that I know of that I have in their contact information, and that stuff will go out. Absolutely. Okay. Kirsten mentioned he uses Things 3 app. I have seen that in passing. Have not tried it, but I've heard good things about it. So that's another one that's worth looking into. But again, with software, I would encourage all of you, by all means, ask people in Facebook groups that you're in, ask acquaintances, but don't run out and just install something and start using it, especially if you have to pay for it because somebody else said it's great. Just like Notion. The best part of it is you can start with Notion for free, and you can start to experiment and try it out. And there's a learning curve. That piece of software, and by the way, the other thing that's cool about Notion, you can use it in a web browser or download an actual Notion app. There is a Notion app for your phone, Android, and Mac, right? So, but yeah, there's a learning curve to really get the most out of it that you can. This time-saving concept of automating all this stuff, it's a commitment, right? It's simply a commitment that you have to make. So it's one of those things, if you're going to do it, you've got to take the time to learn how this stuff actually works. Okay? All right, I think I've got all those questions. Nick had one question, but also really quick. Well, you know what? Since it's on my website, I won't do the shop breakdown tonight. I'm going to tell you, go check it out on the website. In fact, I'll give you the link one more time here, just so you have it. It's also in the description below. There's a lot more cool information on the website than what I'm going to be able to give you here live tonight. Nick had an actual photography question. The standard group shot, say a half a dozen guys, won an award, they all stand in a line, fig leaf poses if protecting the family jewels. There has to be a better way. What would be the direction? Well, I would definitely want to have them all stand in a line, Nick. Have some of them sit, stagger them a little bit. A lot of it really depends on the context, right? Is this a very formal setting? Are these guys like all in suits and or tuxedos and that kind of stuff, or is this more of a casual setting, right? If it's casual, then do casual things. Have some of them sit, maybe have them get a little bit goofy, have a little bit fun. If it's more formal, like if it's a whole bunch of lawyers or something, right? We know how they can be, right? So I would, try to consider, because nobody's going to want to sit if it's a bunch of lawyers, right? Because that, gives more power to the guys that are standing. So unless it's like all one law firm where you can have the partner standing and, the associate sitting, just kind of angle them so they're overlapping. Really what you're trying to get to. In fact, the way you describe it is perfect. Everybody in a line in a fig leaf pose, meaning, they're covering the family jewels. Well, when you see those pictures, what do you see? You see very little effort being put in by the photographer, and you see a bunch of people that are really uncomfortable because basically they feel like they're kind of in front of a firing squad, right? They're lined up in front of a firing squad. So that's the stuff you need to take away, right? Make it look like some effort was put into it. So you don't have to get super creative, because I'm going to assume this is some kind of event, right? You don't necessarily have to get super creative. Angle all the people so they're kind of stacked going in a line, right? Tell them, don't fold your hands in front, put your hands at your side, or maybe even for that matter, fold your hands behind your back. Any of those types of options. But those are the kinds of things that I would suggest for the average kind of event type group setting. You can improve the overall perception of the image dramatically just by making it look like there was some effort put into it, right? I mean, it's kind of really the key. All right. Okay, gang. So, folks, I hope that helped a little bit. I know that there's going to be some more questions, so I'm going to follow up on this topic again next week to see what kind of questions come from this. I took this at a fairly high view because part of it's a mindset. So if you have more specific questions, leave them as questions underneath the video. We'll come back. We'll, dig into some of these different options a little bit more next week. But beyond that, and if you haven't done so yet, please hit the thumbs up, right? If you're here, you must be finding some value in it. So hit it. And you know what? Even if you think I'm wasting your time, go ahead and hit thumbs down. It's completely okay. It's going to help me out either way. I'm just helping or asking for your help to get the word out. Anyway, that being said, if you can't make it to the show, as I mentioned, leave the questions in the comments below. And remember that you don't get back the days that you waste. So work on this time management so that you have more time to go pick up your camera and shoot something. Because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang. Do the work.